Okay, prynawn da pob croeso cyfoedd heddw. Was that okay? Welsh okay? Acceptable. Good afternoon and welcome to Corporate Support and Resources Services Committee, Tuesday the 25th of April 2023. Please note that the meeting has been recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet website. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. So we'll move on to the main agenda for today. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Thanks, Mair. I've also had a message off Councillor Lisa Mitten as well to say she's running slightly late. She should be here by about 3:10. Moving on to the next item of the agenda, which is agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Have we got any declarations of interest? Nope. Moving on then to agenda item 3, which is the part of the report. The first report is the Healthy Organisational Plan. Councillor Barry is going to give a brief introduction, then hand it over the officers for a more in-depth introduction. Then we'll open it up to questions and comments. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Healthy Organisational Plan. So this report looks at our HR strategy in developing the workforce in line with the authority's objectives and activities, and have members review the plan with a view to finalising the healthy organisational strategy. To achieve our organisational goals, the plan includes our need through attraction and recruitment that we attract the best talent despite the challenges we face, not least these days from other competing authorities for that talent. A focus on performance management, ensuring we monitor and improve continuously. Workforce development ensures we do our very best for our staff to develop their skills and self-improvement, along with the need to ensure progression planning within directorates, including obviously apprenticeships. To promote the idea of leadership ethos within our staff, management operate to the highest standards, supported by the authority to ensure their staff are engaged and inspired whilst operating within our regulatory framework. We need to ensure we promote a positive culture based around our objectives and the well-being of staff, aligned to the focus on the authority being sustainable. The Healthy Organisational Strategy outlines 6 key themes: skills and development, culture, attraction and retention, leadership and management, health and well-being, performance management. We've got Hannah with us today. Will take us through some of the specifics as you indicated earlier, Chair. I'll just go through the purpose of the report before handing over. Is to outline the healthy organisational progress and review to incorporating ideas, any areas of improvement for the finalised healthy organisational strategy. And that juncture, Chair, if I hand over to Hannah.
Thanks, Councillor Barry. Hannah.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Beth Jones. She's the Organisation Development Officer, and a key part of Beth and myself's roles has been to work towards the Healthy Organisation Plan. So I'd just like to give you a bit of a background first, before we invite questions. The Healthy Organisation Plan started back in 2019, where we worked with Practice Solutions and our corporate management team and senior leadership team to review the sort of workforce that we wanted to work towards for the future. And there were a number of workshops where we looked at where we were at that moment in time and what type of workforce we wanted for the future. And we did some sort of gap analysis around that. And during that period, we came up with a sort of organisational development plan, which we called a healthy organisation. During that time, obviously, we moved into 2020, and as we were developing that plan, we went through that period where the Assurance Board came in, and as an organisation, we were working towards the Recovery, Transformation and Improvement Plan. So at the start of the healthy organisation, it was a standalone policy, but it then actually got morphed into the RT&I, the Recovery, Transformation and Improvement Plan, and it became a sort of plan within that bigger plan. So over the last, two years, we worked towards a set of actions that we wanted to improve. And as we've then worked throughout 2020 towards trying to move away from the RT&I plan and produce the new corporate plan, which was agreed at council last week, we now need to sort of change the healthy organisation plan into a more high-level strategy, which will be a standalone strategy that will support our new corporate plan. So it's very much, even though we have had a healthy organisation plan over the last 2 years, there's a number of strategies that we now need as a council to develop, which will help support our achievement towards the corporate plan that was agreed last week. So what I wanted to do is, even though there isn't a sort of a document to share with you today, because we're now going to be working towards some of the actions I mentioned at the back of the report to develop the plan on its own. What I wanted to talk to you about is sort of where we've been over the last 2 years, some of the great things that have been achieved throughout the organisation, what we worked on last year, and very much the focus last year was around well-being. And some of the engagement work that we did together with our corporate comms colleagues, which has really sort of driven the organisation in sort of a different direction. What we need to do now is sort of use that information that we gathered last year, together with some stakeholder engagement, to try and make sure that the healthy organisation strategy can stand alone. So that work is in progress, and that's going to form part of Beth's role. So I just wanted to give that background, that we have been on that sort of journey. I think this report, certainly covers the 6 themes in terms of those key elements of any transformation sort of strategy, that gives the right themes, that covers the areas around attracting the right people into the organisation, trying to retain them, trying to ensure that we have people with the right skills and knowledge and behaviours in the right roles. And some of the work that Beth is doing currently is around the workforce planning and succession planning, and also looking at ensuring that we offer skills development for our staff and our leaders and managers. And one of the key things as well is looking at our performance management framework and ensuring that staff have one-to-ones and objectives are set and everybody is working towards those clear goals. So that's a bit of the background, and obviously I'm sure you've read the report and you might have some questions around some of the specifics that we did last year on what our plans are moving forward. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Hannah. I'll open it up to the floor for questions from members. Gary.
Thank you, Chair. Only a couple of questions, Chair, for Hannah. She probably knows I come from one of them, and performance management, so for the exchange emails and that. Just a typo I want to pick up on first, in paragraph 440, where in the last line where you refer to something kept in a drawer. Should that be a drawer with an ER at the end? 4.40, last line. Okay, sorry. Staff forum. It was a particular interest of mine going back over many years. In the old days, we used to meet in the Mayor's Chamber, if you remember, right? Mayor's Parlour. You say we've restarted back in February 22. So it's going now for more than a year. Have you carried out a review of its effectiveness so far? If so, what were the general findings? If not, when will the review be carried out? That's the first part on that one. To follow on from that, then, you also say quite clearly that staff members are mostly corporate centre, which is nothing new. It's always been the same as that. And it's always difficult to reach other staff, especially frontline staff. But what have you done to encourage these members of staff to participate? So leave that one first, Chair. Leave it that first.
Yeah, so we started the staff forum last year in February 2022. And as I said, we worked with our corporate comms colleagues to look at a lot of engagement last year. We started off, running them monthly, and whereas previously we had set people to attend the staff forums, we decided to have a more flexible attendance so that we would share themes, and then staff could decide whether they wanted to come along, with those themes. So we run a different theme every month. When we entered 2023, the staff forum theme for the first one of the year was to review what people thought of the staff forum over the last 12 months. So we had a really good discussion with the attendees around what they liked about some of the things last year, some of the topics that they thought were really useful, and some ideas around, things that could be improved. One of those was that obviously last year, every one of the staff forums was held on Teams. And some of the feedback was that maybe we need to sort of change that and mix that up for 2023. So this year already, we've done a staff forum on the corporate plan, and we held that face-to-face to try and encourage, more people to attend if they wanted to do that face-to-face. But obviously it appeals to some people want it face to face, some people want it on Teams. So we've decided to try, and if there is a topic that might generate a lot of attendance, then we could run both. So we're trying to keep it flexible and trying to listen to what the staff want. But that first one, we spent, a good period of time looking at some of the ideas that they might have for themes that they want to run this year. Obviously, it was very apt that at the time we were looking at the corporate plan. So the second staff forum then was to focus on that, and we did that face to face. Does that answer your question?
So is that a formal review? Is that classed as a formal review? Your findings of that? Are you reporting back on the general feelings?
We haven't necessarily done anything in a written, review, but we took that, that format to just talk to the staff, because those were the staff that, have attended over the last 12 months, and we've put that in our plans for this year.
So is it your intention to have a formal review with a report written, or are you going along those lines?
Not that was my intention, no.
Okay.
No.
The second element is regarding engagement with other members of staff.
Yeah, so engagement with frontline staff is always a challenge, and we worked hard on different initiatives last year to try and engage with them in terms of training and skills development. So we have another officer in the team who's new to HR, and a lot of her focus has been to go out and talk to the frontline and develop them in terms of the training that we have to do around things like safeguarding and violence against women. So some of the mandatory training. We've encouraged them to attend even on Teams by sort of using, any laptops. We do have some HR laptops that we can lend out to try and allow people to have access. And again, this year, it will be our intention to try and perhaps move locations so that it becomes easier, rather than holding it in the Civic Centre or Unit 5, to actually go out to some of the frontline staff to get their feedback, because we do recognise that is one of our challenges in terms of getting that engagement. Some of the frontline staff, are very limited because they are out on rounds, or they're very restricted within the working day to try and do anything other than do their job. So we do recognise that.
Before we go on to the next one, Gary, Kerry just wants to come in and add a bit more background information.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Hannah said there. So, I mean, you will be very familiar with this, Scar. What we did find, didn't we, which was very effective, was our road shows. We were giving all our staff an opportunity to have the same message at the same time. And I think it proved really effective. So I know we have had discussions, haven't we, Han, about reinstating the road shows. And I think that will encourage more of our frontline staff then to come and, as I said, hear the information at the same time as other staff, but also to have their voice as well in any projects or initiatives in the local authority. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Gary?
Is that on now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Is Aldo still working here? Don't have a roadshow then. Talk too much. Sorry, performance management is my next interest. Note to say, within the report, agree with all you've said. Obviously, we exchanged an email via Safe to say about how it links to other policies, such as agile working, etc. And you've come back with a comment, transactional and transformational, new definition of both when it comes to policy and strategies, which I understand, no problem with that. But I'd still like some explanation around how the general principles of agile and home working fit into this strategy. And that may be classed policy as transactional, agile working, and healthy organization focused on the transformational elements to bring about change. But there's key requirements within agile working policy include the setting of clear objectives and measurable outputs, which need to be regularly reviewed between the line manager and the employees. And this covers productivity, quality of work, service standards, etc., which is all about performance management. Are we operating two performance management systems, one transactional, one transformational, and how does it work in practice?
No, I don't think we're operating two sort of systems there. You know, we have the agile working policy because during COVID, you know, we began to work in a more agile way, and we felt that we needed a policy to give guidance about how managers manage their staff in an agile way. And within that policy, obviously, we do detail that the same principle for whether staff are in work or out of work. They need to have objectives set, they need to have regular reviews, their work and outputs need to be monitored. And that's very much sort of the guidance and support that HR will give managers to help them, you know, understand on how to do that. The healthy organization strategy, because I think one of your questions was around there was some things that you thought should have been in there but wasn't. But I felt that some of those things were just you know, the day-to-day things that HR do, whereas the healthy organization is very much focused on some of the things that we haven't been doing well, such as, you know, we haven't perhaps been running like a corporate induction, we haven't been developing our staff as well as we could have, we haven't been focusing on performance management. So that strategy is trying to focus on improvements and transformational things. But obviously HR is still in the background doing all that transactional work. So I think that's sort of what I meant in that email. But certainly in terms of our focus on performance, initiative and framework, we launched that before we went agile. But the work that we did back in 2020, 2021, whilst we were working agile, was to try and make that process and paperwork more digital. So, you know, we were successful in trying to remove from paper, which I think supports our agile policy because we haven't necessarily got to be face to face to have one-to-one meetings. That can be done online, you know, through Teams. But the principles of the framework, you know, remain in that it's a 12-month performance cycle. We set our objectives in September. We have regular one-to-ones in between that objective setting cycle every 4 to 6 weeks. We review in mid-year, which is sort of the March, April time, and then we close the year off of the performance cycle in August. That was a change that we made based on feedback because we had two parts of the organisation doing different cycles. So we had education doing the academic year and corporate doing sort of the financial year. And it was felt from a corporate management team that we needed to align that. So we've done a lot of work over the last 2 years to try and you know, tighten up that process. And, you know, everybody is aware of that cycle, and we try and ensure that, you know, we do regular comms for managers and training for them so that they understand, you know, the same principles for performance management are there whether you are working in the office or working from home. But obviously it's about being clear with staff about understanding the expectations from the managers of what they want their staff to do.
I'm happy as an answer. I have no problem with that, as I say, but I still get a feeling there could be two systems operating. because it is quite specific with agile working, what's required of staff, especially on performance, right? So my question is going to be, understanding what you're saying, is that how do you in the centre then, do you monitor the overall effectiveness of performance management systems, both transformational and transactional? Because you have to have a system in place regarding monitoring of agile working, that's a requirement, plus performance management we have here in this strategy. Are you in the centre got a handle of it all? And if you haven't, who's got a handle on it?
When you say got a handle on it, I think from a HR perspective, all we can do is we will put the mechanisms in place, we put the framework in place for managers to manage their staff. So we try to work with managers so that they know that they have to set objectives. We try and support them to do that. But in terms of knowing the outputs of perhaps, I'm not sure I'm completely understanding the question, but in terms of the outputs of what managers feel their staff are doing in an agile way, that isn't something that we are monitoring from a HR perspective, because we don't ask for individual performance to be reported into HR.
Okay. Just follow on from that then, how do you know then the managers are doing that? Are meeting regularly with staff on a regular basis to monitor performance, etc. So who in the centre is overall receiving reports of that kind, that they are meeting, there's been no deterioration in improvement in service delivery. It's been maintained or improved or deteriorated. So as an authority, do we understand that? Do we know that? And if we do, great, who does know? And if we don't, who should know?
Yeah, so from a centre, we do monitor whether the meetings are taking place. So we ask them during that process to report in through the online system that in September everybody has had objectives set. So they mark that off. The staff member marks that they've had that completed, and the manager marks that. So
sorry, Hannah.
Yeah.
Is that both agile requirements and general performance?
Yeah,
Or is it everything?
everyone.
Yeah. Right.
Everyone.
Okay.
Yeah. And then at mid-year, we have reporting again, so we know how many staff have had their mid-year reviews, and the staff have signed that off, and the manager has signed that off, and that comes to us, and we monitor that. And the same for year end. So 3 times during that performance cycle, we will have a report to say who's done it and who hasn't. And that's for all staff. We do change that flexibly for some of the frontline staff. As you can appreciate, frontline staff using the online system doesn't work. We've tried to set that up probably 18 months ago, where we gave the managers the access so that they could update that system. But again, that proved challenging. So we've tried to work with the frontline managers to look at the best system possible. Having an online system, if you both have laptops and you can both use an online system, that works great. But if you've got somebody frontline who doesn't have access, then that system, doesn't necessarily work for them. So we will do a manual count then for those areas if it doesn't work for them. And then we combine that with the online and produce a dashboard of information of who's done what.
Okay. Just probably a question for probably a different meeting, I suspect, because how do we know that agile working is effective and working? So maybe something, just put a marker down for future discussion.
Yeah, that's fine.
But not for today.
Yeah,
Obviously.
yeah.
Thank you.
Andrew, you just want to come in quickly?
Yeah, it was to that point actually, Gar. I think your question is spot on. I think what Hannah's presented to us here are the mechanisms for producing a system which will give us the required information. But I think that qualitative information that you require is a meeting where perhaps we need Ellis in place, because he's the guy who's going to need to know how are we performing, for example, post-pandemic to pre-pandemic, and as you've identified there, are those production levels, do they equate? Have they fallen away? Have they improved? What are the mechanisms then that we need to apply after interpreting that information? But I think you're absolutely spot on. We need another meeting to explore that, because that interpretation and that high level interpretation of the mechanisms that HR put in place are for Ellis to answer.
Any further questions, guy? Or is that covered? Okay. Anybody else with any questions? Louise?
Thank you, Chair. So when you hoping for the strategy to be implemented?
So we've got some initial information. Obviously it's going to form this basis with the 6 themes. What we're looking at doing now is engaging. Now the corporate plan was signed off last week. We're going to run a workshop in June with our senior leadership team to look at what sort of areas under those 6 themes do they need support with in order to help them achieve the corporate plan. We've started some work internally within the department, within the HR department, looking at the sort of vision and scope that we want as a department, and some of the sort of actions that we need to take to ensure that we're delivering a good service. So we've started that work with some workshops within the team. Obviously the HR team have gone through a period of change where obviously I've come into post, so we're trying to do some internal work with the HR department as well, and that will feed in then to the overall strategy. But the basis is there in terms of the structure. It's just, I have a very strong belief with a HR strategy that it isn't something that should just be designed by HR people. It's got to be owned by the rest of the organization. So I need their input into what type of things do they want to see from their HR function to ensure that it's supporting their strategies and overall the corporate plan. So that's that piece of work that we need to do. We did it, as I said, in 2019 into 2020, but obviously that needs to be updated now.
Okay, lovely. So in relation to 4.41, it says an online performance management system, if set up well. So I read that as perhaps there's quite a bit of work to do around this, or is that just the wording?
I think that's more the wording in terms of where we were. So we were looking at, I don't know if that's in that particular section, but yeah, we had the framework in place. We had everybody, sort of trained on why it was important to manage people's performance. But to move to an online system, some people like the paper, some people still do. Some people, like to do everything online. So, and I think it's important that we didn't want a system that was, difficult to use, because that would put people off. So I think, in terms of the wording, we just mean that it needs to be, a simple system. It needs to be something that, especially because of our workforce being so diverse, as we've mentioned, we've got frontline people, we've got, people working, in the civic centre. It had to be something that tried to, fit everybody.
Okay, thanks. So I know you've mentioned that there's like a bit of a blend with some people prefer like online, but my concern is the opportunity there for that face-to-face real-time interaction with a staff member if they raise an issue. That's my concern that kind of jumped out to this. Is there that real-time opportunity to speak to staff?
Do you mean from a manager's perspective or from like training and
Manager's point of view, if
yeah.
Mm.
So I mean, we would encourage. I mean, I think it was a little bit different when we were right in the mix of COVID. A lot more things were done online. People weren't having face-to-face meetings. But I think as we've come out of that period now, a lot of managers will just be doing then their one-to-ones, and that's the time when they are in the office. They will will do that. And I think we encourage managers to obviously ask their staff, how do you, want to be communicated with? And some of that is done online, and some of that is done face to face. I mean, sometimes you need to discuss things, and you can only do that really in a face to face way. So yeah, I would like to think that, managers sort of understand that, and work towards that.
Okay. In relation to looking after staff and the health side of it, physical and mental health, and I know recently we've seen reports that have come in about certain departments where they've had increasing caseloads, and it's been mentioned that a particular department was suffering vicarious trauma from the level of work and high caseload. So, I just wanted to ask, what is going to be built in around this to kind of prevent that? Because obviously that is life altering to be experiencing that. So, just how is that going to be embedded into this as well, please?
I mean, we focused a lot on well-being last year. We had lots of initiatives. Beth, I don't know whether you want to talk about the mental health first aider program that we ran last year.
So last year, 9 mental health first aiders were trained up. They underwent a 3-day intense course around a variety of different issues and concerns around workforce and capacity. The 9 mental health first aiders are trained throughout the council, so it's across a collaborative approach in terms of they're able to sit in different departments, and it's the purpose of the program is to become more proactive around mental health, so that we can release that stigma, so that when staff feel that they are suffering, they don't have to potentially come to a HR, they don't have to come to a line manager. There are other people out there to support through a variety of different mechanisms. We're looking to work towards working closely with our occupational health department in terms of joining up some of our mental health raising awareness events. For example, we have a stress awareness event happening tomorrow, and the mental health first aiders are going to have a stall there to get their faces out there. There's been some work around the intranet page and the council's website to let people know who we are and what support we can provide. We've set up a email address for staff that potentially don't want to interact face to face, because we recognise it's a blended approach. Again, around stigma, staff may feel that they want to reach out anonymously. We work quite closely alongside occupational health in terms of signposting staff as well for external organisations where they can support staff through a variety of different challenges in terms of well-being, not just physical, emotional, behavioural, and we're just trying to embed that culture really going forward. So there are lots of plans to change the culture around well-being and embed it going forward.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's great. And obviously, raising that awareness, obviously being proactive and preventing things from escalating is great. But my concern is perhaps some sort of critical intervention is needed with some existing staff members. And my worry is, I don't want that forgotten. That's been flagged. So I just wanted to ask, what is there currently for those staff members in that department that have actually put their hand up to say, we are not coping?
We do have the council's employee assistance programme. So obviously, if the line manager or the staff member flagged that to HR, that's the first protocol that we would offer them assistance through that programme. So that's the sort of 24-hour helpline that they can contact. Obviously, if it's to do with caseloads and work and work-related stress, that's an instant sort of referral to our occupational health advisor. So, managers are trained to understand that, and they should be looking out for those signs to see if there is something that they need to refer to. So either through that occupational health route or HR, we would ensure they're supported. But I think sometimes it's more around having other mechanisms in place that they may not want to tell their line manager, or they may not want to come to HR. And that's why I think the mental health first aiders, are going to be another way in which they can get access. We do a lot of signposting and information. The occupational health and well-being pages on the intranet have excellent resources, and we really try to push that. And we did a lot of mixtures of different training and interventions and webinars last year. So, as Beth said, we are really trying to change that culture. And as much as perhaps we focused on the proactiveness, we do understand then that we need to have those same mechanisms in place for reacting, and making sure that the reaction isn't too late, and that we make them aware that there is things in place that they can reach out depending on their preference.
Yeah, it's just with vicarious trauma, recommended interventions for that is clinical, like clinical supervision from trained counsellors. So I'm just going to ask if that could be considered for those staff who specifically said they are experiencing vicarious trauma, because it is life altering.
Yeah, with the occupational health team, to ensure that we can perhaps put something in place that if we get any of those referrals, then there is support there for that. And yeah, we probably need to then speak to the managers within those areas that you're aware of, to ensure that they are trained to know how to refer that forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jay. I'll come back. I got a few other questions.
Any other questions from members? Okay, I've got a couple of questions, and we'll come back to you, Louise. Hannah, you probably want to take a seat. Or you are sitting, sorry. Under section 3.4 of the report, Hannah, it says the aims outlined in the healthy organisational strategy to help drive the required changes in culture, leadership, talent management, performance, reward and recognition. Can you tell me what is meant by reward and recognition here, and can you just elaborate on that slightly, please?
So one of the areas that we've been aware of, I suppose, over the last few years is that through sort of engagement and feedback from staff, including, through the staff forum, maybe things that were done in the past, which were before my time, we're around sort of recognising and rewarding staff for their contribution. So what I wanted to ensure is that we captured that within the healthy organisation. Things like, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean financial reward, but it just means, recognition in terms of perhaps long service, or, staff that have gone above and beyond. And we did work again with corporate comms last year. We started doing things like a staff newsletter, which sort of highlights some of the great contribution that our staff make. But it's also making line managers aware that recognition, even if it's just a thank you, is so important to the culture of the organisation. So those are the types of things that we've tried to embed within the healthy organisation.
Thanks for that, Hannah. It does clarify it slightly. I deal with a lot of reward and recognition in my day job where I'm working, but in terms of what you touched on, then was a lot of the recognition sort of aspect to it in newsletters and that sort of stuff. But when we're actually putting in the word reward, that's got to have some sort of meaning, isn't it? So can you clarify what the meaning for reward would be then? Because in terms of reward, in my eyes, it would be perhaps a financial reward, as in reward, but everything else seems to have gone along the recognition line.
Yeah, people would, think about reward in terms of money, but obviously within, local government, it's very difficult to have, reward as part of any packages that we might offer. And that comes back to our conversation around performance management. Performance management frameworks within other organisations, certainly private sector, is linked to reward, and that's very challenging for us as local government, because we can't have our pay linked into that. So that's what I mean in terms of there are other ways in which we reward staff, which doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to get a bonus like you would in a private organization, and that's just one of the restrictions that we've got.
So, right, okay. Sorry to labor the point, but in terms of reward, I totally understand where we are with the organisation in terms of finance, etc. But what is the reward then for somebody who potentially does a good job, apart from being told they've done a good job? Does that make, am I making sense? Because I
Yeah.
don't know if we got the right term with reward. Perhaps I'm looking at it in completely the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are lots of ways in which we reward staff. We have flexi benefits. We have flexible working. There's lots of ways in which I understand what you mean in terms of we're not rewarding staff in terms of a monetary. However, again, down to managers, there may be other ways in which they have recognised staff. Sometimes they might go out for lunch, or there could be other things that managers would do to reward and recognise their staff. So I take on board what what you say in terms of we're not in that situation where we're financially rewarding people, but I suppose it's down to how you manage people in terms of the type of reward and recognition. But as an organisation, there are lots of rewards in terms of our flexi policies, our flexible working, that is classed as a benefit to staff.
Okay, thanks, Anna. I've got a couple more questions. Under 4.3 the report, it highlights the different apprenticeship posts. Can you confirm how these posts were determined then? I know it mentions they were decided on the key aspects of the RTI, but could you just talk me through quickly the decision-making process in a little bit more detail, just to get a little bit more understanding?
Yep. So we were able to secure a corporate fund of money, which roughly equated to 5 apprentices. So we communicated to the organisation that we were able to fund approximately 5 apprentices, and they had to complete an application form to submit the reasons why they felt in their business area they needed an apprentice, what the benefits would be, what strategy that would obviously help us to achieve, what program of work that they would study whilst being an apprentice. So what we said is, obviously the qualification would have to link to the role in which we're asking them to do. That's one of the criteria of doing an apprenticeship. And also sort of what's the sort of longer term strategy in terms of, we didn't want it to be short term in terms of just two years worth of somebody coming in, but we wanted that longer term view. So managers submitted their completed applications into HR. And then CMT members who didn't submit an application formed part of a panel where we did a scoring mechanism based on the criteria, and we scored them. So the areas then that came out the highest, the top 5 obviously had those apprenticeship areas. When we look at those particular areas, at the time, obviously, we were in the recovery, transformation and improvement sort of stages. So some of that was one of the key was sort of helping us to achieve that RT&I plan. And some of the areas that were successful were roles that perhaps we needed to have, to build, that we currently weren't doing that due to capacity issues. So things like energy and carbon, it was something that we knew we needed to formulate. We needed that to help us towards our improvement plans, and that's the areas then that had that investment.
Thanks, Hannah. I think, Lisa, you want a quick question on that here?
Just say how. Oh, there it is. Yeah, just regarding apprenticeships on 5.2 then as well. Apologies, I can't get online for some reasons. I haven't got my papers. 5.2. Han, is our legacy then of the apprentices that we support the objective or the goal at the end of the apprenticeship that there would, hopefully be a job outcome?
Yeah, so that was one of the areas, that we wanted to look at when we took them on, is that, we don't just want that to be short term for 2 years and then let them go. We want to ensure that we try to retain them. There's no guarantees, and we always said to them right from the recruitment stage, it's a 2-year contract, and we'll do our best to either secure you a role in the role that you're in, or look for another role within the authority.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple more, Hannah, if that's okay. In terms of the corporate induction, this was launched in February 2022, or January, February 22. So it's been in place for just over a year now. How's this gone so far? And what is the feedback shown on the corporate induction to date?
If I'm really honest, is that working? Yeah. If I'm really honest, it's been really, really successful. I'm really proud of the team for delivering the corporate induction. When I brought the team in back at the end of 2021, it was one of the first sort of tasks that they were tasked with to get a corporate induction, because we'd had so many years of recruiting staff and not inducting them in a good way. And if anybody is in this arena, I think you would understand that, attracting people into the organization is great, and you can have the best attraction options. But once you come through the door, if you have a poor experience, then on day one, it doesn't leave very good sort of ideas for the future. So it was one of the key things that I really wanted to do. Obviously, we were still restricted then in terms of COVID. So we did have plans to run our first induction in the January face-to-face. But if you remember, we had another influx of COVID, and we weren't able to do that. So the team adapted really well in terms of changing that to online. And we get great buy-in. Ellis attends every induction to do a welcome. And I did say to the team at the time, look, we might not be running one of these every month. We might not, be required to do that. But it's been so successful. Obviously, our recruitment through different avenues has been consistent. So there hasn't been a month where we haven't run one, and there's been some months where we've run more than one, because we've done some face-to-face for frontline staff and some on Teams as well. So we ran it last year, and then in January I asked the team to evaluate it. So every time we run an induction, we send out evaluation forms. That's collated. The team read those evaluation forms. They make tweaks, they make changes, and it's adapted over that 12-month period. So we evaluated it in January, and we wrote a report, which went to CMT, and it's been really, really successful. We get great buy-in from CMT. Some of the directors attend it, and the feedback is great. We try and do sort of topics throughout the day which are key to their roles, and yeah, it's something that we've been really proud of.
Anna, that's great. It's really pleasing to hear. What's pleasing to hear is I've only got another 12 questions. No, I haven't actually. I haven't. I've got a couple more, but I'll pose these 3 questions all in the same topic for you. 4.12 of the report is about when you focus on your performance to encourage a performance review. So there's a couple of questions around that. How is the initiative working so far? Are all the managers and teams across the authority engaged in the process? And what is the uptake completion rate of a focus on your performance across the council?
Okay, I think if I'm completely honest, we still need more work in terms of embedding it in all areas. I think one of the things which is a challenge, not for us, but for lots of organisations, and I've spoken to other counterparts in other local authorities, and in private sector. Sometimes it's not seen as part of your role, it's seen as something that's additional. Managers, I think, have regular one-to-ones. They talk to their staff. They may talk to their staff daily, weekly, monthly. The challenge is just getting them to record it. So, I think, managers do have these conversations, but the challenge is getting them to record it on the system. And I think that goes back to the question around making sure that we've got a real simple system, so there's no barriers in the way which says, oh, it's too complicated to fill out, it's too lengthy. So overall, there's some, areas that, work really well, and that's completed. Last year, I'd say we were up to around 60% of the organisation that's doing it for last year. For me, that's still not where it needs to be. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, some of the challenges around using the system, updating it, is a challenge for some of our areas. And there are some areas that, they just wouldn't be able to do that. So when we started the process again in September, that's when we said, right, okay, well, we're going to need to find other ways of recording that. So yeah, I think there's still more work to do. And I think, when people are at capacity with other projects and other work, it can be one of those things that you put to the bottom of the pile. You think, yeah, I'll update that later. I'll update that later. And that's the challenge that we've still got to continue to work on.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. I suppose the question is how important is it really, I suppose, and should it be at the bottom of the pile? And it's probably something which we could possibly look at as a scrutiny going forward into 2023, 2024.
Yeah. Sorry, I mean, I think we've had this conversation before. I'm a massive advocate. My background is in performance management, but it's not something that HR can just do by themselves. This is an organizational initiative. So it's got to have every senior leader, every member of corporate management team, bought into this to ensure that it happens, and to ensure that, as you said, it's priority and it isn't put to the bottom of the pile. However, when you are working, at an operational level, you are faced with lots of challenges, lots of juggling plates. So I do empathise with people that struggle to get things completed and paperwork, updated, whether that's online or paper.
And that's great. Thanks for your honest answer. My last question is in terms of 516 of the report about the culture survey. And just been looking at it now because you stood out again. The main comments was you said we did, etc. I've probably seen that before somewhere, and I can't quite remember where I've seen it where you said we did. I hope there's no copyright on that slogan. Mine for us to come into. It is it? All right, there we are then. Marvelous. I knew I'd seen it before. Thanks, Gav. Okay, so the question around that will be that it was communicate with staff in early 2023, it says. Do we have a timescale for when this information will be communicated? And also, will it be shared with councillors as well?
Yeah, we've done, to be honest, we've done lots of communication last year on the results. It's been part of the staff forum themes. so that we've, shared that. We've done it as part of Managers Network. We've done it as part of senior leadership teams. So we did a lot of work on that last year. We've produced the document on a You Said We Did, and also some of the things that we've got, to still work on. One of the things that I felt wasn't quite right is obviously as we entered 2023, a lot of the discussions have been around, the budget cuts, the voluntary early retirements, voluntary redundancies. And if I'm honest, Brent, I didn't feel that over the last couple of weeks it's been appropriate to sort of just, update that even further. So the team, I did ask the team a couple of weeks ago to review it and make it even more up to date, because obviously as we are progressing through the weeks and months, more work is being done. So I've asked them to update that, and I think as we have now moved, I can't say we've moved out to that period, but as it's sort of moving into the year, I think we can do a communication piece with comms to share more of that information.
That's great. Thanks, Hannah. You pleased to know I haven't got any more questions. I'll open it back up to other members' questions, or we'll take comments as well at the same time. Louise?
Yeah, sorry, just one from me. I meant to ask, was the newsletter, how was that cascaded out? Staff newsletter, please.
That's sent out via email for all staff, and I believe paper copies go out to the managers.
We ask managers to.
Yeah, we ask managers to share that with people who don't have access.
Okay, lovely, thanks.
It's on our intranet.
Oh, it is on the
Yeah,
internet.
yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Okay, any more comments or questions from members? Nope, that's great. Anna, can I thank you and Beth for today? I hope it wasn't too arduous, the questions. Thank you for your honesty. It's pleasing to hear. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to, but I don't know if you need to be here for this, does she, Anna? No. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thanks for that. It's perhaps like a boxing fight, isn't it? Moving on to the main event of the afternoon. Just to build it up, okay? Agenda item 4 is the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council's participation in communication and consultation strategy. Andrew was going to give a brief introduction, but he's been called to the cabinet meeting today, so I'll hand it straight over to you, Ken.
Okay, thank you all. Just to introduce for those members who don't know the officers with me, this is Vicky Robst, who is our Communications and Engagement Manager. Obviously, you all know Anne Taylor, Head of Democratic Services, and at the back there is Becky Lee Burrows, have I got that right? Sorry, I'm also new Comms and Engagement Officer. Great. Thank you for giving us the opportunity, obviously, to come back again, because we previously brought this to scrutiny in January of this year. I know there was there was a few questions asked around some issues in the report, primarily around how the strategy linked in with the comms and engagement strategy, and members will have received a copy of both the draft participation strategy and the comms and engagement strategy to look at before the meeting. But I just wanted to touch base on some of the things that were raised that you wanted further clarity on in the last scrutiny meeting. So one of the questions was around our baseline assessment and could we provide evidence of that. So I'm just going to obviously discuss now how we arrived at what we were going to include in our strategy. So the baseline strategy initially comes from the Local Government and Elections Act 2021, whereby all local authorities must have a participation strategy, and we explain to residents how they can influence democracy. The policy intent of this is the guidance that indicates that comms and consultation is an integral part, obviously, of this process as well. As I said, we're happy to provide a copy of the Act to members after the meeting. We also, as part of our assessments as well, we also worked with other local authorities by sharing information and looking at good practices and looking at what they were doing. Our biannual residents survey as well, members of Scrutiny and members of the public will be aware, we do ask questions in that around how we engage with our stakeholders, etc. So feedback from that as well helped form part of the assessment for this strategy moving forward. The most important thing is the ongoing review of our existing consultation processes. That's contributed massively to this strategy. I mean, we've had some key contentious consultations where we've reviewed them at midpoint and taken on board the feedback from our communities, was helped us shape this strategy moving forward. I mean, for example, we've been doing this for 7 to 8 years, and during that time, we did receive an award for good practice for our consultation process from the Consultation Institute, and this was around our Ysgol y Graig consultation, which I know lots of members were heavily involved in, and remember that. Our consultation process. So one of the questions that were asked in the last scrutiny meeting is, have we consulted with stakeholders on this strategy? So obviously it's a live strategy, and we hadn't at that point, as I said, we'd engaged via our annual resident survey, but we needed a bit more substance. So we went away after the scrutiny meeting, and we engaged with all councillors and corporate management team, and obviously the public through an engagement process, which was for a 2-week period, which is ending tonight, I believe. You'll see, so obviously what comes back from that, it could be something fundamental that we'll need to include in the strategy, but from what we've been looking at, there isn't anything really. People seem to be happy with it and are happy, and that there's an opportunity for them to influence the democratic process and get involved in the decision-making process, and that's through a variety of things. I just want to focus on the strategies themselves. So you will see that it looks slightly different to the original strategy, the participation strategy you've seen in the first scrutiny meeting, and like the comms and consultation strategy. The reason for this is we've taken on board what we've had feedback from, particularly from our council meetings, about strategies being something that not all residents can understand, and that's for various reasons. So what we've done is, to pull the strategy together, we've made sure that we've taken into consideration, as I said, feedback from previous council meetings, but as well looked at accessibility requirements in terms of language, design, format, and just the aim of making it easier read for people to look at and understand, of course. As I said, this is a living document, meaning it will change. Every time, obviously, we go out on a consultation exercise, we will have requests from different stakeholders about how to do things slightly differently. And what we will do then is review that and integrate it in part of our consultation and engagement framework, which will be like evaluated, and obviously will evolve then should new legislation as well come in. The other things, obviously, that I wanted to make reference that were picked up before. So happy to answer any questions that you may have for following this report.
Thanks, Kerry. I'll open it up to members of the committee for questions. Councillor Louise Minette-Vokes.
Thank you, Chair. So you've mentioned the consultation Institute, and I know we've spoken about this before. So do we pay them a fee for their advice, or?
We have a membership with them. We don't pay them a fee. We have a membership with them, which is about £1,800, and that is for about a 4-year period. I think what I've discussed previously is we don't always, obviously, we just take advice from them. We don't always do what they say. They just act as a critical friend. I mean, we originally went on board because we had 2 very, very contentious consultations. And I think without them, I mean, Councillor Mitten will obviously know more about this than some members, but that proved so valuable with the Ysgol y Graigwen, where we use the co-production process, and I don't think we would have known how to do that in as much detail as we did. And that we got the community on board by doing that. So as I said, we use them as a critical friend. Maybe moving forward, we've learned a lot from them, that we want to renew our membership, but at this moment in time, it's proved valuable because of the contentious consultations that we've had.
Yeah, because that was what I was going to ask, in relation to the advice taken on board, lessons learned. Do you need to renew the membership?
Yeah, no, we don't if we don't want to.
Okay, great.
Sorry, you don't want to renew the membership?
No, if we don't want to, we don't have to. Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, sorry, Kev.
Please.
It's more of a comment, so I'll come back later.
Gary?
Yeah, thanks, Kev. Coming back to the questions I said I was going to ask regarding the public involvement with the process. What you stated there, you said you've limited consultation by the sound of things with councillors, CMT and public online, whatever engagement and closing date tonight. Concern I've got is that the public need to be involved in the production of the strategy, and yet we have a copy in front of us today, already drafted, and we haven't completed the public consultation exercise. So it's a question there, how has the public been involved in the development of this particular policy or strategy? Following on from that, that's one element. Not a major issue, it's a comment, I think it's that. The other thing of the baseline assessment, you did refer to it regarding the Act, but a baseline assessment to me, if you remember, is that you write down what we're good at, what we're not so good at, what the gaps are, what can we do to improve, which is within the guidance. So the evidence I was asking for, how we conducted such a process of what we're good at, which you have stated some things we're not so good at, what we do to make it better, and then how you're going to measure the progress against those gaps that you've got to show that you have improved. You haven't elaborated on that, so it doesn't stop you going forward. It's a matter of, if you haven't got that baseline assessment, how do you know we're doing well in the future? You have referred to the good practice we did in that school one, if I remember rightly, and that was a one-off exercise, which we did a lot of work on. Are we using the same methods for everything, or is there a range of methods? What works, what doesn't work? So that's where I was coming from with that. Otherwise, how are you going to measure that we're doing things in the right way and we are getting better at what we're doing?
So on our consultation, every time we conduct a consultation exercise, that will be obviously, or we will try and include those questions. How can we do things better? So as I say, that process is always evolving. With regards to the situation now, with regards to engaging this strategy, obviously, when we have that feedback, we will help that form the final version of the strategy, if need be, obviously before it goes to full council. So we will obviously include the comments back from the community. It's a live document though. There's always going to be changes, and we will always continually engage with our stakeholders on this strategy moving forward. Anne wants to come in if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, and you asked, Gary, how we were going to measure whether this was working. Well, as we said, the purpose of the participation strategy is to encourage people to get involved in influencing democracy. we'll know if people are using this in the way we want them to, and whether we've promoted it correctly and whether it's in the right format. Because what we probably find is we probably have more inquiries about co-opted members, because whilst we've got an advert on our website, we get very few queries on that. We might get more petitions coming in for council, we might get more requests for questions, and we might even, you know, get more people coming along to committees. And this is what, you know, this is what we'll use then to measure it, because it is a living document. It has to start somewhere. So we've used the information the comms had to start it, but we'll also use that information then to develop it. And obviously, if we don't see an improvement, we'll need to ask ourselves why. And that's where the consultation then and the engagement will come back into play.
Just a comment on that, Chair. Yes, I understand that, but is it written down anywhere that that is what we're going to do? Is there a document you can measure against on a regular basis to show that is what's happening? I understand you may get more co-optees, you may get more petitions, but have you got a baseline to say this is where we started from, and 3 months down the line, how many have received? Is it getting better, getting worse? So I understand where you're going to come from, but do we have a process that we can follow and understand how it's happening?
From a consultation engagement, yes, we have consultation framework, which we previously brought to Scrutiny in 2021 to look at, and that's always evolving. So we're always working with our communities, listening to what they're saying. For example, one of the things that came out of our last review of it was that our residents prefer more face-to-face engagement. That is a challenge. We want to do that, but I think I've mentioned before, we do not have a dedicated consultation unit in this authority. Obviously, we're doing it as part of comms as well. So, but we are doing it. We know we've got to, as part of the Act, to increase participation, and we will look at how we can do it. I mean, and what we've done is as well, we've created a framework for relevant teams as well to adopt the same processes, haven't we, moving forward? I'll answer
Thank
your
you.
question. Okay.
Louise?
Thank you, Chair. It's following on from Gary, really. You know, these are lovely. These, you know, nice to look at. They're a bit flashy. They're nice. They've both got the same image, though, of the viaduct. I don't know whether that could be changed just to make them look a bit more individual. And that's the thing for me. It doesn't really reflect much of Merthyr. And like I said, this is a living document, so it's great, obviously, any feedback, because it needs to reflect Merthyr. And I think as it is at the minute, this could fit for any local authority. So that's my concern. And I know obviously you've explained to Gary about, you know, it's going to be shaped, it needs to be developed. But yeah, that was just my point to consider, really.
No, that's fine, and I totally agree with you. I think it was just the content that we wanted to get
Yeah.
right, you know, first of
Yeah.
all. Yeah, we've talked in the team, you know, we've got a new social media and digital officer as well. And in fairness, our expertise at the back of there, Bex, who's created the strategy and done a fantastic job. And we've talked about, yes, having our own photos of our own staff and our own services on the strategy as well. So yeah, that is something that's going to evolve.
Okay. Another one, Chair, if that's okay. Kerry, you mentioned social media. So what is the policy with social media like, where does that information go? Because I've seen posts which pick up quite a lot of traffic. Residents use the comment section to report things in. You know, what's the policy? Is it don't reply to that? Is it a standard response we're sending out? Because currently I'm kind of seeing a mixture of both.
Nick will come in now with that.
So our new digital comms office has been in post since October. So the position is evolving as time goes on. Where we've always had a more formal approach, I think, to our social media, our voice has been a little bit more formal. We're looking to move away from that a little bit. So we are getting more, you've got to be careful with social media comments section, because you can get into a dialogue with people, which can pick up traction. It can become really negative. It can be very time consuming also. But we do see value in obviously replying to comments. It's with social media, it's not a way of communication, it's a way to engage with people. It's a two-way conversation, that, you know, we know that, we understand that, we are trying to get to a point where we are responding to more comments. We're also looking to switch comments off, if you like, on some posts, because that is a strategy that we've seen with other people, you know, doing with really controversial posts, so that we don't get that negativity, and then, you know, people are commenting negatively on information that we're sharing. We see that a lot we've seen it with other local authorities, we've seen it with media outlets, which, you know, we've debated in the past. We haven't done that. We haven't done that yet, but it's a strategy that we're looking at going forward. But we do want to change that sort of language, and we do want to change that we use that social media platform, the social media platforms in general. We are expanding. We've gone more out to we use Facebook, we use Twitter, we use Instagram. We're currently looking at LinkedIn as well. We sort of change up the posts on each platform depending on the demographic, or the, you know, the users those platforms more. So, you know, Instagram may have a younger audience. Obviously, LinkedIn is a more business profile. Facebook tends to be a little bit of an older audience. So it's kind of it's an ever evolving sort of position, if you like, with that, where we're sort of trying new things. We're trying to change the voice and to be a bit more interactive with it, and to just be a bit different with that.
So is it one person that kind of mans that, or is that shared out? You know,
So we've got a digital comms officer who is primarily sort of responsible for that, but we also have a social media apprentice.
right. Okay.
And we also have then access, so the individual officers within the department. So there's 3 other comms officers then who have access to those pages. So it varies. The digital comms officer and the social media office apprentice will do the majority of posting, but we also have the individual officers posting to those platforms as well via a social media management tool.
Right. Okay.
So the majority of it, and this is where we're trying to get the same voice, is going through 1 or 2 offices in particular that work together to put most things out, but we do all have access.
Okay. Because I have seen some posts coming out from the local authority on weekends and things, so I was quite curious what was, you know, who's in charge of that, who's doing that. So.
We've got a social media management tool which allows us to schedule things in.
Ah, right, okay.
So we have a schedule that we work to. We have a daily schedule, so we'll post at maybe 8 a.m, 10, 12, 2, 4, 6. We've got a set schedule that we always work to, so not too much content is going out, because we realised that is an issue. During the pandemic, we certainly saw our engagements drop. So the way that people were interacting with our posts dropped considerably, and that's, I think, because we were putting too much out. So we've tried a couple of different strategies, and we feel like what we've got currently is working. The last 2 months, I think our engagements were around the 60,000-70,000 mark.
Okay.
So, you know, people are looking, people are seeing the messages. Whether or not they choose to interact is another thing. But yeah, we've got a social media management tool that we can schedule things in. We're also going a lot more down the route of live content as well. So, you know, for events and things like that, but also on our stories, which again tends to be a bit of a younger audience. So we're using our stories a little bit more on those platforms, Facebook and Instagram in particular.
Okay. With the I have a few concerns about like the social media tool when things are like programmed to be sent out. Obviously, there's nobody at the other end. And if residents are raising things, where's that information going? Is that even being read? If that's just you know, an automatic thing that's gone out. Chair, I don't know if it's the right place to do this, but do you think it's worth us looking at this separately, like the digital side of this, digital comms?
Yeah, I'm happy to agree with that. Yeah, I'll take that.
Can I just ask, to achieve what?
Well, no, I just think because it's developing the strategy, and I'm just a bit concerned about it. Doesn't seem to be a bit of consistency at the moment with some of the stuff I've seen. So I don't know whether it was worth us looking at it to see if there's any value that we could add in kind of improving that digital comm strategy.
In terms of the content, you
Yeah,
mean? Is in terms of-
and responses. I've seen posts where some are being responded to by the local authority, some are not. You know, and that's what I've seen. So
Okay.
that's why I was just asking that really.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take that forward. That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Well,
Can I just come in there, Chair? We don't have a separate digital comms strategy though. It's included in our comms and engagement strategy.
that's fine, but there's nothing stopping us looking.
No,
at
it's nothing
it,
stopping us
yeah.
looking. I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think-
What
I think we just
arena and what avenue we look at that? Is it
Yeah,
a conversation we
yeah.
take offline though? Yeah.
And Chair, in fairness to Louise, I think we just need to be specific around what the ask is, you know, so in relation to the comments and the content. And sorry, that's what I was getting to is, you know, what exactly we're looking for. So if we're more specific around that, then it's not particularly the strategy, but it's the
Yeah.
actual online,
Process.
yeah.
The
stuff like
process.
that, yeah.
Lee?
Thanks, Chair. In terms of face-to-face engagement, how do you decide on where, and what times, and are those spaces reviewed to see if they work?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, 3 to 16, massive example. There was a direct mail shot to all the houses within the surrounding areas, local community groups, etc. But what they needed is to obviously have those face-to-face sessions. So that's why we review an engagement process midway, so we can look at what the community want. What we do, I mean, for example, in our budget consultations, which is probably the one that we get the most out of actually, is that you know, we situate ourselves in places where we got a really good footfall. So that'll be, you know, we look at the as I said, where there's really good footfall, making sure we targeted the different groups, like young people, we'll go to college, etc. We'll go to schools as well. So, you know, each consultation is assessed rather on an individual basis.
It was only you said about the budget consultation that one of the sessions was at the sports centre. I know, like having been based there for a few weeks before, the footfall was really low. I don't know what your numbers were like there, but I wouldn't have thought they would have been high. When in somewhere like St. Tidbill's shopping centre, they would be really high.
Yeah, I think the reason we did that was because of the weather conditions.
Okay.
That was the reason that we put it in the leisure centre. But we cover all of the county borough from down, you know, from north to south. So we're making sure whether we've got different locations. But
Okay.
we've had really good footfall in the leisure centre on different occasions. It just depends.
Okay. One last question, Chair, if that's all right. It's on what Louise said really about digital content and stuff. How many paid social ads do you do? Do you do them often? Because obviously something like I look at the Facebook page again, and some of the stuff I thought would be have heavy engagement and traffic is quite low. So obviously Facebook, cuts the algorithm down and it throttles who it wants to see. So
Before Vic comes in, Sheila, you know, we're a salary only budget in comms and consultation, so we're relying on service areas to pay us for their Facebook advertising. So it is challenging, but do you want?
Yeah, so in terms of how many paid adverts we do, not very many, to be honest. And for the reason Kerry says, you know, we don't have budget to do any paid advertising corporately. However, individual projects may have some budget that then they'll look to us then to advise on how to sort of promote that, and whether, you know, paid advertising on social media is one of those things. We do some of that. We do some around the Welsh Language Policy Officer gives us, you know, some budget to promote some of the Welsh language events because she has budget to do so. Some of the neighbourhood services, recycling initiatives, things like that. But corporately, none at all, because we don't have the budget there to do it. It depends on individual projects.
okay, thank you. I think that's something to look at. I think for not a lot of money and a lot of spend, you can hit quite a big numbers as well. Okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay, just a couple of questions from me, Kev, if that's okay. Under 3.4 of the cover report, where it says both strategies have been redeveloped into easy read versions. I can obviously see this is a case because both documents look very slick and very glossy, and that's a good thing. But have they been quality checked through any accessibility toolkit to ensure they do come under the remit of easy read? I know the council use an accessibility toolkit called Silk Tide. Has this been utilised on this occasion, or is there a plan to use some sort of accessibility toolkit as a measure of this accessibility?
Yeah, so no, it hasn't. But that is a really good point and a valid point. Thank you. We can definitely certainly look to do that. Myself and Beck, who designed the strategy in terms of the layout and the format, we've taken into, so we both sit on the the accessibility working group. So we've taken our experiences from sitting on that group and a workshop that we've done previously in terms of accessibility, making things easy to read, etc. So we've taken on board the training that we have had and incorporated that into this document. But I definitely, using Silk Tide as a tool is definitely a good measure as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Last question. Within the participation strategy, where it says read our full participation strategy here, there's no link to allow the reader to access the full strategy. Is this because the full strategy is still being drafted, or is there another reason for this?
Of
course. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Chair, Safe just wanted me to confirm in response to your question, because it's been recorded. Yes, obviously it's because it's in draft format. We will, when the original format goes out, it'll be linked to the full version.
Okay, thank you both. Is there any more questions from members? Kevin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the question from me, Kerr, is on the participation strategy. I think it's page 28 of the documentation. You got to ask a question at committee or add an item to a forward. Should that be forward work program or just forward? And also, the request should be submitted in writing by electronic mail, and there are deadlines for submission. I'm wondering whether it'd be a good idea to actually put the deadlines in there for people to be aware of.
What we say for the deadlines, yeah, we could put them in there. But what we wanted more was for the people to get in touch with us and speak to us about the kind of things they wanted. So what we were saying was there are deadlines, and we thought if somebody was interested in doing that, then they could get in touch with us and have a conversation with us first. But if you feel that it would be more appropriate to put the timelines in there, then we'll do that. It's just there was a reason we didn't.
Yeah. I think it'd be much more user friendly if we actually put the deadlines in. But I totally get where you're coming from, man.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the other question? Where was the other point?
It's actually in relation to the heading on that part. Ask a question at committee or add an item to a forward.
Oh, right, yeah, I can see. Yeah. Add an item to a forward plan. Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Turn my microphone off.
Okay, there's no more questions. Any comments? Councillor Mitten.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just in relation to consultation, and I think there must be an opportunity really to recognise strengths of the department as well and lessons learned. I know Kerry has already touched upon it, but certainly two major consultations that I was heavily involved with, there were lessons learned, and I think that going back to my colleague's question around the Consultation Institute as well, I would commend that to the council to continue that membership, because certainly they were a critical friend at critical points. I mean, during one consultation, some councillors and a particular resident were quite vitriolic, shall I say, in their pursuit of finding flaws within the consultation process, especially the last one that we had. And what was so important to me for the staff as well, being the leader at the time and heavily involved and also cabinet member for education, was that they were able to show evidence of where they had gone through the whole process thoroughly, but also listened as well, made changes, and then crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. So I would heavily, as I said, commend that we continue with that, because it also supported the staff. And shall I be, yeah, I'll say it, and their mental health as well, because I said it became quite vitriolic. So it's important that we continue with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, there's nobody else indicated they want to comment. I'll just one comment, Vicky, on terms of the using the different social media platforms. I shall await the TikTok videos which you'll produce.
We have started. We have, yeah. So we started using TikTok. We're just sort of slowly testing the waters on that. But if you'd like to get involved with any of the TikTok trend dances, you're welcome to.
I'm not on TikTok. I was being a little bit, okay, I think I perhaps will join TikTok. Thank you for coming today. Thanks for your honesty and for your answers today. It was really pleasing to hear. Thank you very much. You can stay if you want, but you know, you're more than welcome to leave. And Matthew, I just want to double check on this when we go into the next item on the agenda, which is the report recommendations. Obviously, in terms of this, we want to probably discuss how item 3 and item 4 went. So would this need to be, and mindful if we're going to be talking about this, would this need to be recorded, or do we stop the recording? Okay, lovely. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. Okay, in terms of item 5 is the report recommendations. So did they address the recommendations in the report, how we added value, etc. So in terms of the two items which we've had already, item 3 and item 4, do we want to add any comments or questions or anything around those? Are we all happy? Gary?
Chair, I wouldn't say totally happy, because if somebody asks us the question, have we complied with the requirements of the guidance? I think from the answers we received today, we haven't.
Yeah.
And I think that is just a further discussion sometime outside the meeting.
Okay. Louise?
Yeah, I still feel I'm a bit unclear about the digital side of it, and that's why I raised it, like the process. I think you've got lots of staff involved and certain people doing certain bits. You've got like an Autobot which generates things, and I think for me the key, it needs to be consistent, the approach, in how they engage online. And you know, if they are happy to receive comments, well, what are you doing with those comments? So that was it for me, really. What was it? Still many unanswered things in relation to the digital side of it. But yeah, that was it for me.
Okay, great. Yeah, we can take that forward. Any other comments? No, okay. We'll move on to then item 6, which is the forward work programme on pages 39 to 52. As we come in now towards the end of the year, this is the last scrutiny now of the calendar year. On the bottom part of the feedback, on the bottom part of the forward work programme is the feedback and we've received from our meeting, which we held on the customer service operating models. Safe has kindly added agenda item 8A, which is the corporate support and resources scrutiny feedback on there. So I'll just open it up to members if they want to discuss it, anything they want to add to it. We're still awaiting a report from Alan Owen in terms of outcomes from the conversations which have gone on, which is something which we'll chase up going forward. But does anybody want to add anything into that? No? Okay. So that's where we are for the forward work programme 2022-2023. As I said, there's nothing else to add to that now because that's going to be the end of the calendar year. Where we go forward into 2023-2024 is another item, and that's something which I'm sure will be agended for the chair, whoever he or she may be, for the next calendar year going forward. Scrutiny for item 7, scrutiny for referrals. We haven't received any. Agenda item 8, feedback on scrutiny activities. Okay, so that's something we can be aware of. Which, obviously, we've touched on this with a workshop we undertook on the 8th of February. So we'll contact Alan Owen to see what sort of answers we can get and what sort of timescales we'll get from Safe, if that's okay. Anybody want to add anything to that? Are we happy with that approach? Or Louise?
Especially when we've just looked at like the healthy organisation strategy in relation to making sure the staff are protected and healthy with the mental health as well. You know, and I think some of the findings that we've had from that workshop, you know, with there are particular groups of staff which are unhappy. There's lots of confusion. People don't know where people are. You know, it's unfortunate, you know, that we had to have that workshop to try and tease out some of that. But I think getting some responses on that is quite critical, really, especially if they want to move forward with the plan, the healthy organisation plan, because it all feeds into it.
I totally agree. And I think that probably needs to formulate for the forward work programme for first one for 23-24 Safe.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. Also, to go with the telephone directories, the locations of officers.
That's a good point.
Because they've, you know, we've got highways back in 20 now, and half the time, you know who's where in the Civic and Unit 20.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think, yeah, I think it's important that we get some sort of outcome from this at the soonest possible opportunity now, so we can discuss it at the next meeting. Okay. Agenda item 9, any other business deemed urgent by the chair? I haven't any. Apart from, I just wanted to thank everybody for their attendance, their contribution, their thoughts, their words over the last year. For me, it's been a pleasure to chair this committee over the last year. It has actually. I think we've discussed and talked about a lot of items, and I think we've done a lot of good work. And I think I'm sure officers would also say as well that they've been suitably challenged over the last year from this committee, which is a good thing, which is what we wanted to achieve from day one. We wanted to be a critical friend and we wanted to be challenging, but in a constructive way. And I think we've achieved that. So hopefully going forward into the next year, that process can continue as well. But thank you all for your contributions, and have a lovely rest of the evening. Whoever's back now for 5:30, fulfills council. Gary, unfortunately not you. We'll see you all there, but thank you all very much.